It's 10:52 on a Tuesday morning, and there is a meeting in your calendar that wasn't there yesterday. 15 minutes, no agenda, your manager, and a name from HR you've never spoken to in 4 years. You look at it for a long moment. Then you do the thing everybody does, which is decide it's probably nothing and go and make a coffee you don't want, holding the mug with both hands like it's cold outside. It is not nothing. By 11:20, you are walking back to your desk carrying a folder, and the strangest part is how normal everything looks. Someone is laughing near the printer. Your screen is still open on the spreadsheet you were annoyed about an hour ago. You sit down and you read one line of the letter 3 times without any of it going in. Role eliminated. Effective in 4 weeks. Then the number at the bottom, which is your severance and which is smaller than you expected, because you have never once in 4 years thought to check what your severance would be. Here's what you have. You're 34. You earn $4,400 a month after tax. Your savings account has $11,200 in it, which for the last 2 years you have quietly thought of as quite good, because it's more than most people you know and because you have never had to test it. You've never had to ask it a question. And today, walking to your car in the middle of a Tuesday, you ask it the only question that has ever mattered, which is, how long? You sit in the car and you don't start the engine. You open your banking app, 11,200, and you try to work out how long that lasts. And you realize, with a slightly sick feeling, that you don't actually know what your life costs. Not really. You know your rent. You know roughly what you spend on food. But the actual number, the total, the whole thing, the sum of every automatic payment and subscription and direct debit that leaves your account, whether you're employed or not, you have never added it up. Not once. Not in your whole adult life. So, that night you do. Kitchen table, laptop, 12 months of bank statements, and a mug of tea that goes cold beside you. Rent, $1,450. Utilities, $210. Phone, $65. Groceries, $480. Car insurance, $140. Petrol, $190. Car payment, $310. Gym, $52, which you have used 11 times this year, and you know that because you counted just now, and it made you feel worse. Streaming services, and this is where it gets embarrassing because there are 5 of them, and you can only name 3 from memory, $68 a month, and then the ones you find at the bottom of the statement that you had genuinely forgotten existed. A cloud storage plan at $9.99, a meditation app at $14.99 that you signed up for in a very optimistic January. A subscription to a magazine's website, $4, which has been leaving your account every month for 2 years and 8 months, and which you have opened exactly twice. Total, $3,440 a month. That's what your life costs. That's the actual number, and now the arithmetic that changes everything. 11,200 divided by 3,440. 3.25, 3 months, 3 months and 1 week, and then there is nothing left at all. You sit back in the chair, because you have been telling yourself for 2 years that you had savings, and what you actually had was 3 months. You didn't have a cushion. You had a countdown, and you just hadn't started it yet. Here's the thing. Almost nobody understands until the day they need to. Money isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in time. $11,000 means nothing on its own. It's a big number or a small number, depending entirely on what your life costs to run. The same 11,000 is a year of breathing room for one person and 6 weeks of panic for another. And the number that decides which one you are isn't your salary. It's your monthly burn. Your salary determines how fast you fill the tank. Your burn determines how far the tank gets you. And most people spend their entire adult lives obsessing over the first number and never once calculating the second. Week 1, you do what everyone does, which is nothing useful. You tell yourself you're processing. You apply for 2 jobs on the first day, feel productive, and then don't apply for another for 5 days. You keep the redundancy quiet. You tell your parents and one friend and nobody else, because saying it out loud makes it real. You buy takeaway 3 times because it's been a hard week and you deserve it, and both of those things are true and it still costs you $81. And the countdown doesn't care that you're processing. That's the cruel part. It runs at exactly the same speed whether you're job hunting at 6 in the morning or lying on the sofa at 2 in the afternoon watching something you won't remember. The clock is completely indifferent to how you feel about it. Week 2 is when it lands properly. Wednesday afternoon, you go to make lunch and you find yourself standing in front of the open fridge doing something you have never done before, which is calculating whether you can make this last another day rather than going to the shop. And it isn't dramatic. Nobody's starving. But something in you shifts permanently because for the first time in your life, you are aware of the shape of your money instead of just the amount. So you sit down that evening and you go back to the list. And this is the part I actually want you to pay attention to, because this is where most people go wrong. The obvious instinct is to cut everything, cancel it all, eat rice, punish yourself into solvency. It feels correct. It feels like taking it seriously, and it fails almost every single time for one very simple reason. A plan that makes your life unbearable is a plan you will abandon in 11 days. And then you'll feel like a failure on top of being unemployed, and you'll spend more than you would have if you'd never started. So instead, you do something less satisfying and much more effective. You sort every expense into 3 piles. Pile 1, the ones that keep the roof on: rent, utilities, insurance, food, the phone you need to receive a job offer on. These don't get touched. Cutting these to save $50 while risking the thing keeping you housed is the worst trade in personal finance. Pile 2, the ones that are just habits wearing a costume. The 5 streaming services you couldn't name, the gym you used 11 times, the meditation app from Optimistic January, the magazine you opened twice. These go, not forever. You can restart every one of them in 90 seconds when you're working again, and that's exactly the point. Nothing here is a decision about your identity. It's a pause button. And you cancel them, and it takes you 40 minutes on a Wednesday night. And it comes to $159 a month. Now, $159 is not a life-changing sum. If someone offered you that as a raise, you'd be mildly pleased and forget about it by Friday. But in your current situation, it isn't $159, it's 11 extra days. That's what it converts to. Nearly a fortnight of runway, bought with 40 minutes of canceling things you had already stopped using. That is a better hourly rate than any job you have ever had. Pile 3 is the hard one, and it's the one people skip. These are the things you genuinely enjoy, not habits, actual pleasures. And the mistake is to put them in pile 2 out of guilt. You keep 2, deliberately, on purpose, written down. For you, it's the coffee you buy on Saturday mornings when you walk, because it's $4 and it's the only part of the week that still feels normal, and 1 streaming service, because at some point in the evening, you have to stop being a person who is unemployed and just be a person watching something. $21 a month, total, protected. That's not weakness. That's what makes the other cuts survivable. A plan with nothing good in it is a plan with an expiry date. New burn, $3,260. New runway, 3 months and 3 weeks. You bought 2.5 weeks of your life back in one evening. Week 4, the severance lands, $6,100, and it does something strange to your head, because your account now says $17,300, and for about 4 hours you feel wealthy. Genuinely. You almost book something, and this is the trap, and it is such a specific and human trap. A lump sum doesn't feel like the same species of money as a salary. It feels like a windfall, like it arrived from outside your life, like it's extra. It isn't. It's the last money you are going to receive for an unknown period of time, but it doesn't feel that way because it arrived all at once, and the human brain is genuinely terrible at telling the difference between a large amount of money and a long amount of money. So, you translate it immediately before the feeling can do any damage. 6,100 divided by 3,260. 1.87. Not $6,000. 56 days. That's what it is. 8 weeks of being alive with the rent paid, and if you spend $1,200 of it on something to feel better, you haven't spent $1,200. You have spent 11 days. Total runway now. 5 months and 1 week. And you write it on a piece of paper and stick it to the fridge, and you update it every Sunday, and it becomes the single most useful object in your house. Because a number you look at every week is a number you make decisions with, and a number sitting invisibly in an app is a number that surprises you at the worst possible moment. Month 2. Interviews start. 2 of them go nowhere. The third goes well enough that you spend a weekend quietly redecorating a future in your head. And then a very polite email arrives on Monday, explaining they went with someone else, and you're surprised by how much it takes out of you. And in month 2, you learn the thing nobody puts in the articles, which is that the money problem and the morale problem are the same problem. When you're low, you spend. Not extravagantly. A delivery instead of cooking. A small thing off the internet at 11 at night. A drink out because sitting in the flat one more evening is unbearable. It's never one big irresponsible purchase. It's $40 here, $60 there, and at the end of the month, you're $220 over and you can't point to where it went. This is why just be disciplined fails as advice. Nobody overspends because they don't understand arithmetic. They overspend because they feel awful. And spending is the fastest available way to feel slightly less awful for about 20 minutes. The fix isn't willpower. It's the $21 you protected in week 2. The deliberate, planned, guilt-free thing waiting for exactly this moment. When Wednesday is bad, you have somewhere to put it that you already decided was allowed. That's what that pile was for. You didn't know it at the time, but you were building a pressure valve. Month 3. And this is the week it actually gets frightening, because the fridge paper now says 2 months and 1 week, and 2 months is close enough to see the end of. You start applying for jobs you don't want. You catch yourself, at 2 a.m., doing the maths on what you'd do at 0, which is a maths problem with no good answers in it. And then something genuinely useful happens, which is that fear makes you specific. You stop sending the same generic application to 40 places. You pick 6 companies you actually want, you find an actual human at each one, and you write 6 real messages. In 4 months of comfortable employment, you would never have done this. It took a 2-month runway to make you brave enough to be direct. 2 of the 6 reply. 1 turns into a conversation, then a second conversation, then an offer. 3 weeks later, at $4,200 a month after tax. $200 less than you were on, and you take it, and the relief is physical, like putting down something heavy you'd stopped noticing you were carrying. Now, here's what actually matters, and it's the part almost everybody gets wrong in the first fortnight of a new job. Your runway when the offer came. 1 month and 2 weeks. That's how close it was. And the overwhelming instinct now is to restart everything immediately. All 5 streaming services, the gym, the meditation app, the magazine you never read, as a kind of reward. To go back to exactly the life that gave you 3 months of runway in the first place. You don't. And not because you become an ascetic, but because you have information now that you did not have 4 months ago. You know what your life costs. You know what a month of runway feels like when it's the second to last one. And you know that the difference between 3 months of safety and 6 months of safety was never a bigger salary. It was $159 of stuff you'd already stopped using. So you restart 2 of them. The 2 you actually missed, the other 4 stay canceled permanently, and you genuinely do not notice. And you keep the fridge paper, same piece of paper, same pen, updated every Sunday. Except now the number goes up instead of down because you set an automatic transfer for the day after payday, $600 a month before you can see it, before it has a chance to become part of your life. 14 months later, that paper says 8 months. Not because you earn more, you earn slightly less than you did the day you got made redundant. 8 months because your burn is $3,080. And because you now understand the thing you did not understand at 10:52 on that Tuesday morning, that safety was never a number in an account. It was always a length of time, and there were 2 ways to make it longer, and only one of them was ever under your control. 2 years on, someone at your new job gets pulled into a 15-minute meeting with no agenda. And you watch him come back to his desk carrying the folder, doing the same maths you did, in the same car park, with the same slightly sick feeling. And you sit with him, and you tell him the only 2 things that would have helped you. Add it all up tonight, and then work out how long. Not what you have, how long you have, because he thinks he's just lost his job. And what he's actually lost is the amount of time he never bothered to measure.